Yep, the beloved sequel known as Majora's Mask, the predecessor from Ocarina of Time. But again, it's really a debate on which one is really better, but I've heard a lot of great reviews about Majora's Mask being the most unique Zelda game, the fact how Zelda nor Ganon is in this game, which is very fascinating between the original and 3DS version. I'm always going to 3DS, but I'm hearing a lot of people say that the Majora's Mask overall was a better game. But how is that game better than this game? Now, hearing that so many people and reviewers are saying that Majora's Mask is better than Ocarina of Time, after having a blast with Ocarina of Time, I just said, well, I'll be the judge of that. So the game starts out pretty simple. Link is now done with his destiny. He's defeated Ganondorf. Now that he has finished his journey in Hyrule, he's going on his own secret and personal journey to find his friend that he parted ways from, mainly Navi the Fairy. Now, it starts with Link just riding in the forest with Epona. It's unclear where he is exactly. I mean, it's probably only been a couple of months since the ending of Ocarina of Time. So he runs into these two other fairies known as Tail and... well, I can't remember the other name, they just refer to her as Sis, but while Link is riding in the forest, he ends up running into the two of the fairies, and lucky them, they end up knocking him off his horse and knocking him out. And who could be lurking or behind this? Well, apparently the Majora's Mask Skull Kid is behind it. You run into this Skull Kid in Ocarina of Time doing the flute, but apparently he got a hold of a mask. Question is, what does he want? Well, honestly, anything that a normal criminal would want. Just some loot, apparently, that he's carrying. He ends up going by Link's ocarina and decides to mess with it. While he's messing with it, apparently the fairies are arguing if they want to touch it as well, and arguing what could happen if they end up touching it or breaking it. Link ends up waking up while they're arguing. He ends up surprising the Skull Kid as he's awake. He tries to grab the Skull Kid, but the Skull Kid takes his horse and tries to ride off with it. Link grabs the leg, and then he ends up going on a really slow and painful ride across the forest, till eventually they reach a peak right here, and Link has knocked off his own horse, and now he's gotta run after the Skull Kid who has stolen his horse and his Ocarina of Time, which he clearly is gonna need both in his adventure. As Link runs straight towards where he went, he ends up running into areas that he didn't see coming, and he has to end up jumping up to find out where they went, and ends up running into this hole. He falls into the hole and now is not in Hyrule, but is now in the corrupted and dark world known as Termina. As soon as Link lands on the flower, he runs into the Skull Kid once again, explaining that the Skull Kid had no use for the horse, so he decided to just get rid of the horse, implying that he just ditched it. Now, apparently that put Link off, but apparently Skull Kid just decides to give him a crazy curse by spinning his head back and forth vice versa until Link legit feels like he's losing his mind. Then a giant hallucination scene starts happening here while Link's seeing nothing but darkness. And one odd memory from Ocarina of Time, if you decide to do the happy mask salesman, that all these little Deku creatures will get close to you. Link obviously tries to run away in fear, but apparently the fear gets to him and he wakes up as a Deku scrub, which obviously traumatizes him. I mean, who wouldn't be traumatized? The Skull Kid obviously laughs at him in his tyranny, and he just decides to fly off like that, like a dick. Like an idiot he was, but apparently his dickness ends up leaving one fairy behind. Now, apparently, Link follows him and gets out into main Clock Town. He runs into this mask salesman and mentions that he needs to get his ocarina back and his mask to fix him. So as soon as he's out, now he can see the main area that he is in. It's kind of odd how he fell in a pit and now is in this new world. I mean, I'm starting to wonder if this Termina world is just really deep underground, like this secret underworld in a way, if you know what I mean. But other than that, now that Link is in Clock Town, Tail tells him to go to the Great Fairy, which should give him some information on where the Skull Kid's whereabouts are. You collect the one fairy near your fountain area, then you head straight to North Clock Town to get what you need to get to the fairy, because apparently she was only missing one fairy after the Skull Kid was messing with it. I mean, the Skull Kid made a gigantic mess in Termina. As soon as you get to the Great Fairy, she will reform as her one missing piece out of all the fairies has finally returned. Now that she's back to normal, she points out that apparently she was taken off guard from the Skull Kid as well, and she was broken apart. Now that we know how much of an idiot the Skull Kid is and causing damage all over the place, she gives you this magic power, or just the magic meter you have. It also gives you the ability to shoot those bubbles or whatever the Deku thing is shooting. But after you get this ability, she points out that the only way you can find out where the whereabouts of the Skull Kid is if you head to the observatory. The question is, the only way to get to the observatory is you're blocked by a kid and you need a code to get there. And how do you get the code? You gotta play this game of hide and seek, which I obviously won't show. After you win the game, they'll tell you what the code is. They turn around and show their little numbers on their back, and the order they're showing is what the code is. It's not always the same, so don't take this number code seriously because it may be different on whatever you're playing. Eventually, after you tell me the code, the kid will move aside and you can head straight to the observatory. On your way in, you'll just see mainly a sewer-like area. There is one spider up ahead you'll have to pass. That's if you just decide to take the side way, which is a lot easier, so that way you can completely avoid that giant spider. You have to blow up this balloon, of course, to get up there. I'm not sure if that's in the remaster as well. I know it's in the 3DS. But on your way over there, you run to the observatory. Now, in the observatory is where you're going to need to use the telescope to find out where exactly the Skull Kid is hiding in Clock Town. Even though I feel like it is extremely obvious where it's hiding, you need guidance to find out where it is. Now, of course, Deku Link asks the old man if he wants to look in the telescope. Obviously, we say yes. And by the moment you get a chance to look at it, you will pretty much get a good view of the upper areas of Termina, as you're pretty much quite a bit of distance from the area. It's kind of surprising how far away you got. Now you'll find out that apparently the Skull Kid is hiding just on top of the tower, and you see the moon above there as well. As it shoots a giant tear, you're going to need to get up to the top of the tower because there's an area that is being blocked by a certain creature. Now after the tear has been brought down, you obviously walk outside, pick up the tear, and you head straight back to Clock Town after this. Now after you get the tear, you will head straight back into a specific area in the main Clock Town areas, where you're going to need to use the tier to get inside a certain position. But before you do that, you actually need to talk to the Scarecrow because one, I'm obviously on the first day to get to the final day where you need to be to get up to the Skull Kid, mainly the final 6 hours. You gotta talk to the Scarecrow a bunch of times till you're at the final 12 hours. After you talk to it enough times, it'll be about that time because every time you talk to it, 12 hours pass. It's odd how you can watch something dancing for 12 hours. It's kind of surprising how that works, but still, otherwise, after you talk to the Scarecrow enough times, it'll cut to the right time. It's now the final day, the final 2 hours. You head straight back over to Clock Town, talk to the character that blocks the flower. After you give him that tear, now you can fly over here, you collect the extra heart piece, and then you wait for the final 6 hours for the clock to finally open up so you can go up and confront the Skull Kid, of course. Now, as soon as it opens when the festival starts, that's as soon as the stairs will open and you will be able to find out what the Skull Kid is doing exactly up there. I mean, honestly, he's kind of just floating up there while he's just throwing the ocarina up and down. Because apparently he still has it and is kind of mocking you for it. But otherwise, as soon as you get to him, you find out that he has the other fairy, of course. And they just refer to the character as Sis. They don't exactly give a specific name. The fairy points out where the 4 areas you need to go to, known as the swamp, mountain, the ocean, and the canyon. That's mainly what I remember, but otherwise, after you get those 4 ideas, that's pretty much the main temples you need to visit. But the problem is, it's at the end of the cycle and you don't have time to go to those locations, so all you can really do at this moment is just get the Ocarina of Time back and just reverse time. Question is, how exactly do you get the Ocarina back? Well, you need to blow a bubble at the Skull Kid while it's doing that. I mean, honestly, I don't know why the fairy couldn't just grab it, but nah, you gotta use the bubble. And as soon as you use the bubble, he'll immediately drop the ocarina, and as soon as you pick up the ocarina, you should be able to use it to play the Song of Time and go back. But before that happens, you get a flashback of Zelda telling you the Song of Time before you left Hyrule. And I'm gonna guess maybe the explanation here would also say that the reason why he has the hero shield is that it might have been a reward after stopping Ganon in an Ocarina of Time. I mean, it's ironic that Link gave Zelda the Ocarina back when he was taken back, and he immediately gets the Ocarina of Time back as a kid. It's kind of ironic how he gave it away and he got it right back. But again, yeah, before he left Hyrule, he was told the Song of Time, even though I don't think he forgot what it was, because it's still the same Link, just he went back in time as a kid. But still, he has the Song of Time, he still remembers it from Zelda's memory, and now he is going to use it to go back in time so that way he can prevent the moon from crashing down on Termina and absolutely just destroying the entire world. Now, after that's been done, apparently Tail just hits you on the head telling you to snap out of it and you're still in danger. But yep, like I mentioned, the one thing you can do right now is just get out those pipes and play the Song of Time. After you play the Song of Time, Link ends up back to the dawn of the first day and has completely started over like nothing's ever happened. He hasn't kept anything except the Ocarina of Time. It's kind of odd how that one song is a lot more useful here than it was in Ocarina of Time, where all you used it was just to move blocks. But in this game, you actually move it to change time, which makes more sense. But the good news is this, you got the Ocarina back, so now the Happy Mask Salesman now has what he needs to turn you back into a human. As soon as he does that, then... Wait, where'd you get that piano? The Happy Mask Salesman plays the Song of Time on a piano that comes out of nowhere. After you learn the song, pretty much Link will play the same thing on his pipes, and he will transform back to normal, and the entire curse is over, and it is now his new and first transformation mask that he will use on his journey into his first dungeon. Well, now that you've done your part, let's just say the Happy Mask Salesman doesn't take it very well to find out that you didn't get Majora's mask back, even though that was what the promise was. You don't tell me. My mask? You did get it back, didn't you? What have you done to me? If you leave that mask out there, something terrible will happen. Well, he's losing his shit, definitely. Apparently you find out that that mask that he's wearing is a curse mask that was used for hexing rituals. It has a cursed power in it. Whoever's wearing it has been given evil powers and unbelievably according powers, according to legend. The power is so great that they had to send the mask away in a certain area. It's not really clear how the Happy Mask Salesman got his hands on the mask. The fact how he had it and lost it to that thing, now he needs to get it back before that moon crashes down. He pretty much begs you to get it back. He's legit just going nuts. I mean, seriously, look at that. Look at him go. But apparently when you tell him, alright, I'll do it, just stop shaking around going crazy. But after you tell him that, then he starts smiling again, and now he gives you the notebook so you can keep track of what you've done, so it'll help you with side quests in the long run of the game, which will be helpful. I mean, at least if you want to keep track on certain times of day when you're doing the side quests. Unlike me, I didn't really pay attention to this kind of thing. Really, I didn't. But yeah, otherwise, after you do this part, you immediately leave the tower and just leave him to wait as you get the mask. As soon as you head back out, you're back out into Clock Town. I don't think I called it that last time, I kind of just said the outside area, but now that you're human again, you should be able to revisit the fairy fountain from earlier. The only thing is you're going to have to recapture that fairy because you reverse time, of course. But one thing is, after you learn that part, you head to the fairy fountain. And now that you come here with the fairy once again, you will get an upgrade that you weren't able to get originally because, one, you were a Deku Nut originally. This time that the fairy sees you, she will give you a new special ability, of course, and at the same time she will gift you with a magic mask that'll help her, or help you, find all the fairies in the other dungeons. As she points out, there are 4 other fairies in 4 other areas of the world where you need to get fairy fountains, and you need those stray fairies to get them to appear. So after you get all the fairies, those masks will help you get to them. Now this guard, apparently every time you start the cycle he won't let you leave, but as soon as he sees your sword he lets you leave. Now you're out in the Termina Field, which is actually the main theme I'm playing in this entire video. As soon as you get out the Termina Field, you're gonna head straight south, and south is where the swamp areas are. Eventually you will make it to Deku Palace. I'm skipping everything else because it's not important. Otherwise, when you get to Deku Palace, you're blocked by 2 guards, of course, that, well, one, if they see you as a Deku Nut, they'll let you pass, but if you're human, they won't let you pass, of course. As soon as you get by, you're going to head straight into the palace area, mainly where the king is. Now, you notice that there is a monkey being held captive, and they assume that the monkey kidnapped the daughter, but obviously they didn't. You can come in here to get a quick pick of the king if you want to get that little reward from that guy near the shed from earlier that I didn't point out. But otherwise, you're going to go through platforms to get over to where the monkey is. You're going to have to go through 2 different areas. Eventually, you will make it over here where the monkey is. After getting a good conversation with the monkey, you will learn that there is a song you need to know if you want to get to the next dungeon where the actual princess is being held. Now, after you find out that he believes you and that he'll trust you with the song, he immediately tells you the song as he whispers it. Now, as he whispers it, you play it on your pipes, and after you do that, you have now learned the song of, I think it's Soaring, as I recall. After you play that song, yeah, immediately the guards will notice you and you'll get pulled away. After you get pulled away, he trusts you to save the princess before things get too late. But by the time you're done, you're immediately thrown out, and you will be on your way to the Woodfall Temple. Now after that's over, when you get inside the Woodfall Temple, it's actually a pretty simple temple. You mainly just need to use the fairy mask and the Deku mask to get through some simple puzzles. I mean, one thing, you actually need the Deku mask to beat the mini-boss here, which actually is carrying the boss key, which is mainly just a simple frog and a turtle, but mainly you get inside the flowers, you bash through it to get the frog off, and you just need to hit it with arrows until it eventually dies. Last my check, I think you need to repeat this process a total of 3 times. I always wondered, why are these things always 3s? I have no idea why they always 3s in games. You have to hit three times. It's just always 3 times. I don't know why, but after you hit it 3 times, both of them, the frog will go back to normal, and of course the turtle just shrinks and dies, I'm guessing. After you do that, you'll get the boss key, and you will be able to fight the boss of the Woodfall Temple, which is known as 𝑭𝒖𝒍𝒍, as I recall, which is a giant Amazon warrior with a red eye on the back. Now, those giant eyes didn't exist originally, but I feel like that addition to it on the 3DS is a good add-on to it. Makes the battle more unique. I mean, you can almost say you can just go nuts with the fight originally, but they actually made you strategize how you beat him this time. Now, after you beat the eye enough times, you'll eventually just fade into a mask for you to pick up a heart and the actual, or at least whatever helmet he was wearing or crown, which still has his face on it as well too. But after you collect that next mask, you will immediately be taken into this spirit realm of a place where the 4 giants are being held. After you defeat each temple, you will free another giant. After you free each giant, eventually you'll have enough giants to stop the moon. But before then, you need to play a specific song for the giants to trust you, of course. Maybe not with every giant, but the first one I do recall playing one song. Eventually, after you get this giant to be convinced, you'll eventually head to the next temple after playing this one song. The next moment here, Tail is thinking about after you defeated that first temple that there's obviously 3 more you need to get to. She also apologizes for the fact how you lose the horse earlier in the beginning. But after she points out, of course, you need to head to the mountains for the next target, which is in the Icy Snows, which is on the opposite side of the map. Instead of the south, you are now going north, but before you do that, there's one thing you need to do first, and that's actually return the Deku Princess to the Deku Palace. And get this, how exactly do you take her back? By putting her in a bottle. Yeah, sure, I guess that makes sense. You head back to Deku Palace to return the princess, of course, to the Deku King. Of course, the Deku King is surprised about this, but of course she's furious about abusing a monkey for kidnapping her, even though it obviously didn't happen. She immediately orders the soldiers to let the monkey go, and the monkey gives his gratitude by pointing out that there is a little present that he wanted to give to Link that's on the side, which is obviously another optional mask that I am not going to acknowledge because I'm mainly focusing on the main story. So, moving on. On your way out of the place, you're going to head straight to the north, where you're going to have to hit one block, of course, to break the ice to get across into the snow. On your way through, there's quite a lot of areas you're going to have to blow through, and all the Tektites and the huge amounts of snow in your way. Usually you need the bomb mask or just the normal mask. Either one works, usually, or just normal bombs. Eventually you will make it up ahead here where you'll meet that owl. The only way you can know where you're going in this moment is if you follow the feathers. Just try to be careful because you're on invisible ice that you can easily slip on, so be wise with your steps here. Eventually when you get inside, you will find another item. Usually the bird will just tell you another couple of useless things you clearly don't need to know. I don't know why that bird's even in these two games, but otherwise, after you get some good, interesting items out of what's usually just hiding in the main cave. The main chest, of course, is where you get that item from the previous game of Ocarina of Time known as the Lens of Truth, which was a very useful item. Now you can actually see the items, and you will actually see this ghost of a Goron, which was apparently a Goron leader from the previous generation, or at least a while back. You eventually find him, and he is surprised that you can see him. He asks you if you could follow him, and you have to follow him across, apparently, from what I remember, 3 different rooms. He's gonna head straight up north, where he's gonna head straight up to his grave. Now, just as I remember, the trail you need to go to get climbing up is usually right, left, and right. If that's easy enough for you guys to remember, without having to forget and climb up and down like how I frequently had to do it. But otherwise, at a certain point, after climbing up, I don't think the bunny mask makes you climb any faster, so it doesn't really make a difference. But by the moment you get up, you'll notice that there's one Goron frozen while the other one is just sitting there. As soon as you get up there, the Goron will immediately head inside, while you head inside as well. And as soon as you get inside, you play the Song of Healing, and the Goron's soul will be healed, and just like the last thing you did when you played the Song of Healing, it turns into a mask. Now you have the Goron mask. One of the most useful masks in the game other than the Deku mask. After collecting the mask, you have to do one little side quest where you have to get a lullaby to get the giant Goron to move, which I clearly skipped just to get to the point when you get into the main dungeon, of course. Now, mainly when you first enter the place, there's obviously blocks you have to push, another frozen wolf you have to pass, and many other obstacles along the way. The main idea is to push these white platforms here till they fall off, until it gets lower and lower to the point where you can actually approach the main area of where the boss is located. You have to smash through these snow areas, of course, until you get up higher. Eventually, you will make it to the area to where the boss is located exactly. You need to cross this area specifically to get up to the boss. That is frozen in ice. You eventually unfreeze it, and you find the next boss in the game, which is honestly one of the most pathetic bosses in any Zelda game, known as Goat. Yeah, I prefer to pronounce it Goat, it just makes more sense. I don't know why people like to call it Got. And why would a boss's name be Got? It's clearly Goat. Looks like a goat, it runs like a goat, moves like a goat, it's a goat. It's not a Got, it's Goat. But otherwise, after you hit it enough times crashing into it, hit the giant eye, it'll eventually crash into the wall. Leave a hard piece, and it will leave its face and horns, of course, for you to pick up as the next mask. After you head over there, you pick up the hard piece, and then you pick up the mask. After you do both of these, you will be teleported right back into the spirit realm, of course, again, where the giants are located, like I mentioned earlier. Of course, after you do this dungeon, now you have half the giants you need, implying that you are getting halfway to the point where you are almost ready to stop the moon from crashing on Termina. Each one makes that specific pose eventually when you get through it. But now that you're through 2 temples, you still have 2 more, which is known as the infamous Great Bay Temple and the Stone Tower Temple. 2 of the really interesting temples, but that'll be covered next week.